Hello travelers, Boardman21 here, and today we're going to discuss Blackhole. Recently we put up another poll for skill discussion number 6. You guys have voted, and here we are with Blackhole winning by more than double the next skill run-up, so that's obviously the one that is wanted to be talked about. So let's go ahead and dig into it. So to go over some pros, some cons, and some suggestions for Blackhole, many of you have probably tried it. I mean, obviously just the sound of it is a skill that you want to try. You want to see what it does. And one of the coolest things about it is Blackhole does exactly what you think a black hole will do. It sucks things in. And what's cool is it's actually really powerful. It's a great CC. It could last for a few seconds, pulling enemies in every second and keeping them there. It's one of the longest, most powerful CCs to keep enemies off of your back. Now, while that's cool and all, its downfall is that it has a really long cooldown. Now, if you're using it for CC, you can imagine having a long cooldown is obviously necessary. After all, Snap Freeze has a long cooldown. You're not going to want something that can perma CC an enemy or enemies or a boss, because then it just becomes a ridiculously overpowered skill. However, there are other ways to build it that even negate the whole pull effect and make it not pull at all, or build into such a high mana cost there's no way to spam it. But waiting 16 to 20 seconds for a cooldown is absolutely ridiculous. So some of my suggestions for this build is going to be reduce the cooldown if you go any route other than the just straight on CC for pull and pull area. And if you do things like Armegheddon binary system for multiple black holes, you should be able to reduce the cooldown to where you can actually spam it multiple times. There's nothing worse than having a 16-second cooldown for a skill that lasts 4 seconds, so you only have 25% uptime, and it doesn't move with you. It stays where it's at. You're running through echoes, and for 12 seconds of every 16 seconds, you're just running around with nothing to do. You're waiting on a cooldown. And therefore, what it leads you to do is use another skill as a primary damage dealer, as Elemental Nova, Volcanic Orb, Glacier, Lightning Blast, something else that you can cast constantly, and it turns Blackhole into a secondary use skill. And even though you turned it into the skill tree as a primary damage dealer, you just can't use it that often, and it makes it not feel as good. It's clunky, it's super expensive, the cooldown just gets annoying as hell, and it ends up you getting to a point where you just don't want to use it and you want to use something else. So again, the cooldown has got to go if you're using it for anything other than CC. They'll need to rebalance the skill tree a little bit, change it around so some of the nodes that do the pull kind of has its own section, and if you go anywhere else, you can get into cooldown reductions, but it no longer pulls. This already does exist inside the Red Giant. You no longer pull. This actually cancels out the pull, gives it an increased duration, changes the base damage to fire, but the problem is it doesn't do anything for cooldown. So you still, if you take this, you now no longer pull mobs, but you have to still wait the 16 seconds for a cooldown on it just to be able to use it, and the 80% duration only takes it from like 2 seconds to almost a 4-second duration. So it's just not that viable. Now, they do have a little bit of cooldown reduction here. If you go up to Rifts, you can get up to 40% cooldown recovery speed, which will take you from your 16-second cooldown. You can get it down to about 10 to 11 if you put 4 points in there, but then you've lost 40% of the damage. Now, that's the only part that sucks. It's fine if you do the pull strength and pull area, but if you're using it as a damage skill, losing 40% of your multiplicative damage, basically reducing the damage you do by half, just so you can cast it twice as often, is no benefit. No benefit there. Like, you literally have sacrificed all of the damage you would have got anyways just to be able to cast it more often. So I don't agree with that. This one should definitely not minus out your damage. I agree with the pull strength and pull area. That's exactly what I was saying earlier. If you take cooldown reduction, you should definitely lose the strength and the pull, because the pull can be OP if you can constantly have it going. Now, there's some other pros that I like about this build. One thing I really like Armageddon. I like that you have Blackhole that calls in meteors towards the center of it and absolutely just annihilate mobs. The only con about this is that it doesn't use your meteor skill tree, which we're really hoping in the future, and I think it's even been mentioned by the devs before that they want it to. I believe that's what they've said. So hopefully in the future we do see a rework to this tree. Armageddon starts using the skill tree from your meteor, so it synergizes with at least one other skill, because that's something that it lacks, and you'll be able to actually make the meteors do much more damage. So for instance, Armegheddon calls down one meteor, a single projectile every second to the epicenter, but if you were able to use the skill train, you went with multiple projectiles. Maybe each cast that it calls down is actually a use of the skill, and then the skill itself can have up to, I believe you can get 6 meteors total. You could get 24 meteors coming down in Armegheddon, which would be OP, and would actually make the 200 mana cost make sense, because it's an absolutely ridiculous mana cost, and right now if you use it, it's just not worth it. The only way that I found it to actually be viable is if you use teleport with the free skill after use, so that you can teleport and then use Blackhole just to negate that 200 mana cost, because as cool as it is to look and watch, and it can get decent damage, it's not as OP as just using Elemental Nova or another primary skill that can do more damage per second for 100% uptime, and it just makes Blackhole go to the back burner. Now there are some other cool things about this. You can build several different ways. Like I said, you can build into Armegheddon where you have the meteor come down. You can build into the binary system where you have 2 black holes that are orbiting but it no longer pulls. You can build into scatter, which gives you a second black hole, and if you team this up with the binary system, you can actually get 4 black holes on the map, which is really cool, although none of them are pulling, but they do decent damage. It's one of the ways that I want to do a build for the sorcerer in the future. I can't decide if I want to go binary system or if I want to go with Armegheddon, because they're both really cool and viable to use. And then we also have where you can build into freeze and explosions. You can build into more damage per enemy that's nearby the core. You can build into more flat physical damage. You can have the orb seek enemies. There's some cool things that you can do with it, but overall, like I said, the main problem, the cooldown, way too long. You should be able to reduce that for negating your pull effect with Blackhole. With all of that said, let's go ahead and dig into some of the different ways to build it and how viable that they are. So for the first build, we've got Blackhole, and this one's very viable, but again, it just feels clunky because you don't get 100% uptime of it. In fact, you can at most, even with tier 7 cooldown reduction on Helm and the 20% cooldown reduction inside of your passive tree and the 5% cooldown reduction every time that you teleport, it's still about 33% of uptime, which is really annoying. But with this build setup, we're going to be casting it to where we have a binary system, so 2 black holes, and then we'll also have it set up so a secondary black hole is cast. So you have a total of 2 sets of 2 black holes, 4 total, 2 cold, 2 fire, and they'll both be orbiting each other about 10 meters apart, so you almost get like a full screen AoE, which is really cool. If it wasn't for the cooldown reduction, this would be one of my favorite skills to use on the sorcerer. But we got 3 points in Catalyst for some more damage, 1 point in Red Giant. It does take away the effect to be able to pull, so you can no longer pull in enemies, but that's okay because you'll be hitting in such a large area with a nice AoE that it doesn't matter. This increases the duration by 80%. Then we got 3 points in Scorching, which gives you 45% fire damage penetration. 1 point in Flaming gives you 10% more multiplicative fire damage. And 1 point in Infusion gives you ward gain per second, and then 1 point in Binary System will now give you 100% more damage, but you'll cast 2 black holes instead of 1. They don't suck anything in, but 1 is cold and 1 is fire, and they rotate around each other. And the one thing that sucks about this entire thing is all of this is based on fire, and it's not based on elemental. So only the fire orb is going to be doing really good damage for you, and you're going to want to build fully into the fire. You can build into elemental damage as well, but make sure you, like idols, you get fire damage, and especially get that increase doubled over 300 mana, because you get the fire penetration and the more fire damage, and it's going to be the harder hitting one. It should all be elemental. That's definitely a suggestion I have for them, since you are building into cold and fire. Now, if you don't want to go full elemental on this, I could see them adding cold and fire penetration, which would also be beneficial, or adding in, instead of an ignite chance down here per second, adding in a cold penetration down here, so you can decide which one you want to go for, or put a couple of points in both if you decide that just having elemental in one spot would be too powerful. Then we got 2 points in Stability, 2 points in Endless Maul, and 1 point in Scatter. This is what allows you to cast the second black hole. It'll be 10 meters away, but this will give you 4 black holes total. And then for some extra damage, we went with 3 points in Umbral Core, 1 point in Event Horizon, and 1 point in Pulsar. Now, the reason Pulsar is in this build, and the reason I like it, is it's a huge AoE. It basically sends out a pulsar, a wave that does damage, and a huge AoE, and you're going to get 4 of these every second because you have 4 orbs. Now, while they're not going to hit super hard, it is cool to watch it happen, and it does, you know, kill trash mobs and things. And if you can land a pair of orbiting stars or black holes on top of a boss, oh, it's really good damage. So
let's go ahead and show what this looks like and how you'd use it. So first off, I have nothing on this character. It's naked. Your damage is 230 DPS on this, a 35 mana cost, not horrible, and a 20-second cooldown. But like I said, you can bring that down to like 13 or 14 seconds if you get a tier 5 cooldown reduction on your helm. You take the 20% in the passive tree, 5% inside teleport, blah blah blah. And when you cast this, there you go. Look at that. Beautiful. You got 4 black orbs, you got 2 fire, you got the 2 cold, and each second you have those multiple waves going out. Now if we cast this, and this is the part that sucks, is right now we're waiting on this whole 12 more seconds of cooldown here. So we gotta wait and we gotta wait. It'd be really cool if teleport, instead of giving 5% cooldown reduction, had a 5% chance every time you teleported to reset the duration of all your skills, or the cooldown of all your skills. That'd be pretty epic. So let's go ahead and cast this on the training dummy to show what it would look like. And you can see that when you're on top of it, you're getting multiple ticks from both of them. The waves are coming in and hitting, so you're getting actually quite a bit of damage. Now again, it's obviously not doing a lot because we're completely naked on this character, but if you land that on a boss, you're not only doing good damage on the boss, but the other one that's away can kill trash mobs and whatever else. And you can easily see this can take up your entire screen. If I stand in the middle, the entire screen is getting hit by this. Now, it's unfortunate that you can't suck in enemies at least a little bit, and it also sucks that these don't move towards the enemies. If you want, and you get a couple of extra black hole levels on the relic, I believe it comes on, if you do get that for the skill tree, you know, I really wanted to try building into the black hole seeks enemies. I don't think the orbiting stars, I think they move together. I haven't tested it yet, but it'd be really cool. Those start 10 meters apart, but they can negate towards the same target on like a boss. And what would be extra cool about that is the fact that then you're getting a lot more damage on a single target. Alright, let's move on to build number 2. For build number 2, we're going with Armegheddon, and this will be the final build that I'll show you. The other ways that you can build the skill tree are just not as viable, especially for damage. They're all CC ways, and that's just going into the very basics of going into the pool, going into the pool area, and then of course, you know, building into freeze if you wanted to do that. They're not really anything more than just the CC, you know, using snap freeze or using something that stuns an enemy. So for this is still another damaging way, a DPS version, and we've got 1 point in Catalyst, 3 points in Umbral Core, 1 point in Event Horizon, 1 point in Pulsar because I love it, 1 point in Intensity, 5 points in Massive, 3 points in Stability for that maximum duration, 1 point in Endless Maul for some more duration, but we don't want to put too many points in here because we don't want the cooldown to be forever. 2 points in Weakened Reality gives us 18 flat cold damage, 1 point in Singularity, and 1 point in Armageddon. And Armageddon's the big one. Black Hole causes Meteor to fall nearby each second, but costs significantly more mana. Now the meteors will come down right on top of the epic core in the middle, and that's why you want to build into the pull, and the pull strength is because you want those enemies to be sucked into the middle, as that's where the black hole is going to hit. Now the unfortunate part about this is the fact that even if it didn't pull, if you took 1 point in Red Giant, you could make it not pull but last longer, so you'll get more hits, but it's unlikely, like unless you have a boss that just doesn't move around much, it's more effective to take the pull. You also have the Scattered for the second black hole. You would think, oh man, 2 Armageddons, that would actually be awesome and really powerful. Unfortunately, you can only cast 1 with Singularity. It limits you to only having 1 go off. That's specifically meant to counteract the Scattered, which sucks. So they really limit you on the way that you could do this. And then the fact that Meteor doesn't use your skill tree just makes it to where, you know, it was like the final straw on I'm just not going to play around with this very much because it's just too clunky for me. However, the skill itself, very damaging. It does do wonders. You just have to use it as a secondary skill. It's not going to be your primary damage dealer, but to get into what it looks like here, you go ahead and cast it. Look at that mana cost go way down. You have your pulsars coming out, you got your black hole in the middle, and then you got 4 meteors that come down and hit really hard. It's really cool. It is devastating. The DPS on this completely naked is 617. That's about 3 times what we are getting with the binary system. Overall, it just costs a ridiculous amount of mana, and it's just not worth it in my opinion, when you could just channel Elemental Nova or do something else that does way more damage, has a bigger area, an area that moves with you, and is easier to use. Your survivability is going to go up. Black Hole, just a nice secondary effect that could clear out a huge pack of mobs, but I mean, so could Elemental Nova. So there's really nothing that I would see Black Hole doing that you can't do with another skill better. And then I just wanted to show you guys what it looks like when you have the skill tree set up so that black hole will seek an enemy and they'll come towards each other, but you still have the 4 black holes set up. So with this, we're going to have 2 binary systems that are circling. When you cast them, will be 10 meters apart, but then they'll come towards a single target, and this is great for bosses. I'm completely naked, so I'm probably going to die in this fight really quick, but I just wanted to cast it on him when he spawns just to show you how it collides together to be forced onto him. So let's go ahead and go to him and show you exactly what that's like. Look at that, all on top of him by the time they disappeared. He's immune right now, so they didn't do any damage, but you can get a lot more damage out of them when they come together like that. Alright, I know we only did 2 builds with this, but for Black Hole, that's really all I got for you. The other ways are just, you know, pull and CC and freeze. So with that, that's going to wrap up this skill discussion. There's also a teaser that's released at the same time of this with Black Hole. We went with Armegheddon with it. I may do another teaser, or I may do another build down the road, or even if you guys want it sooner than that, that goes with the binary system, just to show you a very viable way of building that. But I've showed you both skill trees, so you can try it both ways yourself. Both of them scale the same way, so go ahead and feel free to try both of those once that build guide is out and you're looking to play around with Black Hole. There's going to be another pull out for skill discussion number 7, so make sure to vote on that. And as always, stay safe, travelers.